With us, this is GamePlan 2022, and with me in studio to discuss this very important topic of whether the government is broke or not, I have two gentlemen with me in studio. I have Raphael Obonyo, who's a public policy analyst. Welcome to the studio, sir.
Thank you so much, and thanks for having me.
And of course, there's FCPA Erastus Kwaka, who's the member in the Public Finance and Tax Committee of ISPAC. Karibu sana to the studio.
Thank you for the welcome.
I want to start with you, Obonyo. Yesterday, during President Ruto's inaugural speech at the UN, he mentioned something, and you as a public policy analyst, it was quite important that he mentioned it. He said that there's this group of people he calls the hustlers. He says that the said hustlers take nothing for granted and they survive overwhelmingly frequent odds and get to succeed greatly. And I just wanted to hear what you made out of that.
I think, thank you so very much. I think what I made out of that is that there are high levels of inequalities around the world, but most importantly in Kenya. There's a significant large group of people that is always left behind at the bottom of the pyramid. Mm-hmm. These are people who are largely considered to be people who are living below the poverty line. And they are given all manner of names, and now we call them hustlers. And the challenge with this is that if you have that large group of people who are at the bottom, it means that first they are placing a big burden on the economy because they are struggling to survive in the society, but they're also taking so much in terms of consumption. Mm-hmm. So what is being recommended and what, of course, the current government has been pushing during the campaign, and now, of course, something they need to implement, is how do we basically invert that pyramid and get these people to the top, because it's a large group of people. So how do we get them to the top? And if we get them to the top, it means that we need to create opportunities for them. Mm-hmm. And if we create opportunities for them, it means that they're going to contribute to the economy in different ways, either through taxation or different kind of contributions. And for a long time, this group of people have been seen to be a burden, but I think what President Ruto was trying to say is that they're not a burden. These people can contribute positively to the economy, to the society, and so we shouldn't look at them as a problem or people with a problem. We should also look at the positive elements, and part of it is determination, part of it is their struggle to survive, part of it is the ingenuity that they come up with, and we can see this through ideas like entrepreneurship that some of these people have come up with. So I think he was trying to bring out the narrative that these are not just people with a problem or people causing a problem. These are also people who can these are people who can contribute positively to our society.
Well, Erastus Kwaka, the government, there has been a lot of push and pull between leaders of different political formations in the country, and there are people saying that the government is broke. There's some misinformation that was created. Well, Treasury in a Gazette notice dated September 16th, 2022, disclosed that the exchequer balance for the month of August was at 93.6 million shillings. And as I've just said, this fueled misinformation with some leaders, and especially those that are allied to Kenya Kwanza, that formed the government the other day, saying that President William Ruto had inherited a broke country from his predecessor, that is former President Uhuru Kenyatta. But the same government, days later, releases about 3.6 billion shillings for fertilizer subsidy. How does that work? A lot of Kenyans are confused. How does that work? Where are we really as a country?
The politics is the problem. Because the truth is that our tax revenue is very good. Last year and the year before, despite a very hard economic environment with COVID and all that go with it, we still collected the amount of tax that we set out to collect. So it tells you that politics can be bad because it is easy for people to consume negative information, but the positive side of information many times don't come up front. But I'm glad that within the same period of us stating that we are broke and so on, again, there is very positive information from the same system of the government saying it's not the case. And 3.5 billion is just one of them. Now, nobody told us where the 3.5 billion came from.
Yes.
Was it borrowed? The answer is no, it was there. Because as collections come in, you then do what you should do. But does that also mean that if our reserves are so low, then we are still okay? The depth of reserve is a temporary phenomena. I know it as a fact that people held back a lot of money, and many people held back fearing that the elections may come out not quite palatable. And of course, people are used to Kenya, people fighting a little bit, and then coming back to work. And we know it from reports that, for example, the Nairobi Stock Exchange lost a lot of money, not losing, but it was held back by those who had it. One, hoarding it, waiting until the elections are over. Two, the American government increased their reserve rates. So some of that money has flown out to the US. But you know, money flows anyway. It can flow out of the US again if we have certain things that would attract them back. For example, if I'm sure that the returns I'll get out of my money would be more than I would get in the United States of America, I would bring my money back. So the combination of those factors, elections, people holding back, and some of that resource flying out, is a sign that once we get our act together, and of course the government can demonstrate to the world that systems are working, you can make money in Kenya and through Kenya. The monies that were held, have been held, by the way, in forex accounts within Kenya, not outside, will begin to flow back to the economy. So again, what I want to say to answer your question straight, it is too early and rather premature to judge the country as being not bankrupt. Bankrupt is a very heavy word. But for politics, of course, you can say anything. But it's a very heavy word, because if we were really bankrupt, I can assure you, even fuel will not be in our stations. Because you need all those mechanisms to support the supply of fuel and other things. So we are not there yet. Okay. I know the debt burden is heavy. Yes. We as ISPAC have raised that even with Senate before. It is heavy, but it is not what translates to bankruptcy. We are not about to be auctioned. That's what I'm saying.
Well, Kwaka, and the reason I'm asking this is because, like you're saying, and like you rightfully put it, is you're saying that there's a lot of politics around this, and it's really hard to know where we really are as a country. But there has been concerns about the meddling in of our economy, if I may put it that way, but in a very light way, by the IMF. A lot of politicians are talking about this thing, the economy as it is, the way that the former President Uhuru Kenyatta left it. And they're saying that even with the new regime that proposes that bottom-up economic model, we are not still out of the woods yet. We are not on our own. Our policies are greatly determined by the IMF. And I want to hear your views on that.
IMF, yes, because we have a lot of that information through various channels of engagement with stakeholders and also policymakers, so we get to hear. And when I say we, accountants, and of course those of us in the Public Finance Committee, we get to do so. But some of the remarks I will make is as an individual. I came here because of ISPAC, yes. But where it is personal, it must remain personal. It's not the view of ISPAC. Okay. Yeah. One, IMF, if you follow everything they do and say, my guess is as good as yours. You will sink. Number two, and I've said it on other channels, TV channels, it's not just here. Number two, you must be in the place where we were a few years ago, where the IMF themselves came to us begging. I don't know whether you heard that word. And saying, please, can we lend you some money? Please, can we even give you free money? Because those who had those things, and any of them hearing me, of course, they will deny, but in the heart they know it is true. Yeah. They will come begging, and they will come to negotiate with you, not to dictate to you. But where you are in the place of a beggar and a helpless one, yes, you take anything. It's just like a beggar on the streets being given a donkey, and you said, oh, donkey, as a donation, okay, I'll take it and go with it. And that is not a good state to be in. So dictatorship, the answer is yes. But because you are weak, you are likely to accept almost anything, including being told you are employing too many people, sack them. The new government is telling us employ, all right, and creating jobs. Now, the other element is that if you are in a weak position, even your good ideas may be shut down. I don't know if I should pause there because I've not answered your question fully, but I wanted you just to chew that.
Yes, yeah. I'm getting it.
Yeah.
Raphael, as a public policy analyst, Kwaka here is of the opinion that beggars are not choosers. Where we are right now, we're like beggars and we can't get to choose what we want. We cannot cherry pick. As a public policy analyst, what do you think should be done to get out of that hole that we are currently in?
I think I agree with Mr. Erastus. Erastus, partly what he's saying, because we know the history. You remember history has structural adjustment programs that really put countries into some serious quagmire. And so I agree with the fact that you cannot just follow IMF and World Bank blindly. That's very important.
Yes.
Also, we are in an era where IMF and World Bank are also supposed to consider national priorities and national programs. And so that while they can make suggestions, while they can make proposals, while they might have some good ideas, these ideas have to be aligned to our national programs and our national priorities. Obviously, if we are begging, then it means that whatever we are told, then we'll have to go by that. But I think if truly we know how to get ourselves out of that hole, there's only so much you can accommodate from external partners. And I think that's where we need to get. Because if you're saying that we are in debt, of course our debt burden is quite huge. We have a huge wage bill. Now both at the national and the county level. Most of our, we are raising revenue to pay wages, salaries at different level, very little for development programs. We are not raising enough taxes to service our debt and ensure development programs and priorities that we've set are met. But even with that, I think we should be able to negotiate, because Kenya is a fairly strong and promising country. We might be having our challenges, but we should be able to negotiate with the IMF in a way that do not disadvantage us. And so I strongly, I'm of the strong opinion that we need to set our national priorities right, and anyone coming in should be able to help us realize our national priorities. So not to abandon our national priorities and programs, to start following what IMF and World Bank are instructing us. But for us to do that, we need to prove to ourselves, and of course because Because if Kenya fails economically, it means that so many other things will fail. So we also need to prove to ourselves, and of course to any partner who is coming in, that we have the muscle, we have the capability, we have the plan and the vision to get us where we want to go. So, and that is what I think Mr. Erastus is saying, that if you are weak, we'll keep begging. But even if you are weak, but you know where you want to go, no one can bully you around. So we need to be clear on our plans, and we shouldn't do trial and error, because if we do trial and error, that is where someone comes in and says, no, stop that and take this, and you're assured of getting here. But if you're sure of where we want to go in terms of destination, and we have a plan, anyone coming in will only follow you on your path and won't get you off your path.
Okay. Mr. Kwaka, the informal sector in the country employs millions, more than the formal sector in the country. And one of the things that the International Monetary Fund has been asking the government is to broaden the tax base. And you and I know what this means. It will bring on board more hustlers into the tax net. Could that be one of the solutions to get out of that situation we are in currently, the beggars kind of situation, in your opinion?
That is actually one key area. And my personal view, which I've freely expressed, is that one, the informal sector, one of the things we must do, and I hope the new government will do it, shield them from taxation.
Okay.
And whenever I've said that, some people's hair and hairs have gone up. But this is my thesis. One, if you increase this hustler group and enlarge it in an empowered manner, of course, and I'm saying in a productive and profitable manner, what will happen is that demand for goods and services will go up.
Okay.
And you have to twin that with enforcement of VAT collection. Because VAT has got a much, much bigger potential, our host,
Okay.
which has never been fully tapped. And I've been very loud and very clear about that. And if VAT is properly managed, with no barriers, and with no sacred cows, because there have been a lot of sacred cows in the VAT area. Once you get that money in, that money will rival or overtake current collections in PAYE and other taxes. They will run almost pari passu. And then what is going to happen is that our collection ratio to the GDP, once it goes up, even the IMF will look at it and say, wachana na hawa watu. Because this group of the informal sector, their repetitive buying patterns because of consumption will drive VAT. And why do I say you shield them from the ordinary income tax? It can be structured in such a way that you remove them or leave them out because the monies they have, the hustler that we all know, will always go back to buy something. And that will stimulate that sector and move it very high.
Okay.
Now, the people they buy from and the group that supplies them, those are the people we need to watch, not with 2 eyes, but with 10 eyes, to make sure that VAT comes in. Do you know that theoretically, it has been estimated in some cycles that within 5 years, we can actually pay off the so-called heavy debt of Kenya?
Within 5 years?
Yes. Some theorists have given that, and they will tell you certain details. If this was done, this was done, and of course you must deal with corruption, Mr. Munene. Close those doors. we will be able to pay that debt off. But you know what? Every country you need to have some debt. Because there are people hawking money out there. And if you are too close, they will not be very happy with you. So you can take that money to use for certain things, both long-term and medium-term, looking at what we call the transmittive effect of economic decisions.
Yes.
That what you do today will begin to generate resources either in 2 or 3 or 5 years' time. And those will bring in a lot, not only jobs, but also resources. Right. Even if you can't pay it off in 5 years, 10 years, you can reduce it to a half. The local borrowing, by the way, should not stop.
Okay.
If it stops, even me will be very unhappy. Why? Because the treasury bonds will not yield attractive interest rates. And if that fails, the effect of that in the economy is that what will happen? Even banks will not make as much profit as they are making. And those who are investing in those areas will feel also unhappy that the returns are so low. Certain people will even leave Kenya, by the way, because some are attracted because of our T-bonds and our T-bills, which yield very good money.
Yeah.
So that kind of borrowing should always be there because it's a way of the government giving back some of that money to the profit sector and to individuals. I don't know if that is useful, by the way.
It is very useful. And what I'm getting from, and you'll tell me if I'm right or wrong, what I'm getting from you is the situation that we are currently in, the economy as it is right now. Are you saying it's artificial? There's some forces outside and within the country that have brought us to where we are currently?
No, it's not artificial, it's real. But forces are not outside. Forces are within and inside.
Okay.
Our country, we did it ourselves. The days when, as ISPAC, we raised the issue of heavy borrowing, we were told it is okay. But the borrowing as a percentage of GDP globally should be within a certain range so that the productive capacity of the economy is not consumed and subsumed by what you are paying out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Obonyo, there is a proposed hustler fund annually that will be at around 50 billion shillings, but the sources of the funds and the allocation mechanisms have not been made clear by the Kenya Kwanza government. You have been a vocal youth advocate. We all know how the Uwezo Fund went. And what we are getting is that this hustler fund basically copies what Uwezo Fund looked like. And the results of that fund were actually mixed. We had low loan uptake and high default rates. Would you say that this is what will empower that person called the hustler, the bottom of the pyramid? You think the solution is allocating them such kind of funds?
Capital has been a huge challenge to many people who want to venture into business. That has been a big challenge, especially for young people. And just building on what you are talking about in terms of the informal sector, you'll find that a majority of people in the informal sector are actually young people, the youth, who are trying all manner of businesses. In fact, 80% of the working youth population is actually in the informal sectors, doing all manner of businesses. And capital has been a huge challenge. And successive governments have come up with different approaches to try and address the question of inadequate capital for people who want to venture into business. Of course, we saw Youth Fund and we've seen Uwezo Fund. The challenge that we've had, and seems like we never get any lessons from this, because every government comes up with a new fund that does not build or learn from the previous funds. And for example, Uwezo Fund, it's not just mixed reaction. Uwezo Fund, 90% of money that went out there was no repayment, 90%. That's why that fund even, actually no one talks about it, but it's actually collapsed. Youth fund, there was low uptake, also because of the many barriers or the requirements, but also the repayment rate was fairly low. And so if, again, even without answering questioning the source of that fund, if there are no mechanisms and proper infrastructure for actually giving out these funds, but also ensuring repayment rate, because repayment, then we'll end up with the same fund. And remember, this is supposed to be a revolving fund, because there's no way you will be taking money from the exchequer every year, and this money is not bringing back anything. So if you're moving 50 billion, then this 50 billion has to be repaid back so that other people can continue borrowing this amount. So far, it looks very good, very lucrative, a good idea, but then the devil is always in the details.
Okay.
How are we going to get back this money? How will we make sure that this money gets back so that other people, because 50 billion is really little for the many hustlers that are there. How do you make sure that this money keeps revolving? And I think information on how has been very scanty. What, we all know, it's a hustler fund, but how it will go out and it will be brought back, I think no one has told us. And it basically means that we still remain with the history. What we saw with the Weather Fund and what we saw with the Youth Fund. People will take this money. And remember, for as long as people are taking it from government, there's always this notion and attitude that this is our money. So why should I pay back? This is money meant for us. And that has been the attitude out there. How are they going to address that? So that people feel that, yes, this is money that we are borrowing and we need to pay it back. How are they going to track, trace, and ensure that people pay back this money? If that doesn't happen, I think year 2, that fund will not be there and it will be a loss on the part of the government. So good idea, but without proper mechanisms, we'll end up with the same problems that we've seen in the past.
Let's talk about perceptions and attitudes. Like you're talking about when people were given these loans, they had this attitude or perceptions created that this is our money, this is our government. There's also that perception that is created when it comes to paying taxes. And I want us to touch on a very specific category, and that's the digital service tax, DST, that was introduced just a few months ago, or rather was actualized a few months ago. We used to see a lot of posts on social media networks, you know, paid partnership with brand A, B, C, and such. But when this was introduced, such posts went drastically down, and we no longer see some of them because people knew that the government could probably target them for this digital service tax. As a youth advocate, what do you think should be done to ensure that you know, now our youth see such obligations as it's a patriotic duty? It's your duty to help the country grow. What can be done? Because you would understand when the youth would you know, create such perceptions about paying taxes.
I think first is payment of taxes is a challenge for people across the globe, not just Kenya. No one wants money going out, and so you have to create an incentive for people to pay taxes. Of course, sometimes you have to take punitive measures like we've seen in some other countries. But most importantly, in our case, part of the reason why many people feel like paying taxes is a burden is because people feel like we are giving out money to be wasted, to be misused. So accountability, especially on the part of government, is extremely key, so that people will appreciate that if I pay taxes, this is also equal to a good road. If I pay taxes, this is equal to proper healthcare. If I pay taxes, this is equal to... So there has to be that accountability, but there also has to be, even though they say our tax policy is not quid pro quo, like you don't pay so that you get this, but at least in terms of perception, government needs to create that perception that, look, if you pay taxes, we are going to take care of your money, and this is what you're going to get in return. But also just the issue of enforcement. I think it's also very, very important that they enforce so that people don't evade taxes, creating awareness, encouraging people that, you know, yes, it's a patriotic duty, but you have a responsibility. Like they say, kulipa kodi ni kujitegemea. You know, paying taxes means that you are trying to make yourself independent, but also you're trying to contribute to your personal, but also the national progress. So there are myriad of factors and mechanisms that need to be put in place. But for me, the key one is this accountability aspect. Without having a government that is accountable, because people know if they give you money, you're just going to waste it. If you give you money, then we are creating another scandal, then no one will want to pay taxes. So I think the onus is on, of course, both the taxpayers and the government, but most importantly, government on the question of accountability.
Kwaka, there seems to be a different way of viewing things. The previous regime, there's a way it viewed subsidies, and the current regime, whose leader actually was part of the previous regime, there's a way they look at subsidies. He scrapped the fuel subsidy. A very simple question: can a country really survive without subsidies?
Yeah. Yes, allow me, I'll answer that and then allow me to give one or two comments on digital tax also,
okay,
if you don't mind. Subsidy, yes. A responsible, accountable, transparent government. I know transparent also means accountable, but I'm adding those words because it's a passion in my heart. Any government can give subsidies as long as that government is open.
Okay.
And there are many countries, by the way, where subsidy is not even talked about. They know that at the bottom of the glass of water, there is subsidy. And it happens in many countries, including some of the largest populated nations, like India, for example.
Okay.
Now, in our situation, I am afraid and I fear for subsidies because of what will be known, what will come out 1 year, 2 years down the line when the Auditor General's report comes out that there was theft.
Okay.
We're talking about fertilizer, having gone out, some subsidy, and so on. We're talking about maize and other things, and those are good to bring relief to wananchi, including myself. But the subsidy factor, if it is not dealt with in a honest and transparent manner, my friend, that thing can become a Pandora's box that consumes money forever. Even where there's been no subsidy, subsidy will be reported. And even where nothing was imported by Erastus, it will be reported that Erastus is the... And all those things, my friend. So the answer is subsidies are good.
Yes.
Transparently, transparency, truthfulness, openness, and I would say every month there should be a report in the newspapers saying, we did this and this and this and this, these were the subsidies. Where it is me, Erastus, and Mr. Obonyo here, who are the importers, say these things were imported by so and so, and they are being paid 10 billion shillings. If that level of transparency cannot be allowed to prevail, to come out, my friend, get ready what you will read in the auditor's report, because I can write it for you in advance.
You were to make comments on the digital...
Okay.
Yeah, if he allows me.
Yeah, sure,
yeah,
go ahead.
Thank you.
Ahead.
Yeah. I think a year or so ago, I did an article in our journal, the Accountants Journal, about digital tax. One is a fantastic thing, because those elements you are seeing on social media now, they have disappeared. They are still operating. But there are many aspects of digital activities which can still be taxed. And they are not being taxed at the moment.
Okay.
For example, the advertisements that you see even on your phone. and they keep popping up and interfering with your reading of news or reading of your tweet about me and about somebody else. That is money.
Yes.
That we should be tapping. And in my article, I advocated a big yes for the enforcement of the digital tax. It is an area with lots and lots of money, and that money is not coming to Kenya, it is going out. And each time I look at an advert, money has been credited to the account of the provider of that platform.
Okay.
What Kenya must do is to create and make sure that these things can actually be tapped, and also if you don't pay for it, it should be prevented. And I know there is a technology for doing that in other countries. Why are we not doing it in Kenya? And collect is a huge market. It will help reduce our debt burden, by the way, and also give us money. Now, when you talk of the big players in the digital sector,
okay.
And you're talking, of course, all the names we know, the Googles and the so on.
Yep.
Now, I saw it in the newspaper that the American government, part of the pressure they want to put on us is to say stop digital taxation. And that is a very, very dangerous approach,
okay.
because even in the US, they themselves collect tax from the digital players. Why should we not also collect what belongs to us? The monies that have been generated from here. Now, under the OECD issues and debates and so on, there is talk at the moment that what we need to do is to reduce the rate of corporation tax, or also in the alternative or together, reduce tax on all transborder businesses to a certain level, such that if you are doing business in Kenya, to the extent that you have made money in Kenya, you pay tax here, or just have a flat rate. The rate which has been bandied around is 20%. And that kind of approach can rob a country of revenue, but it can also benefit a country in terms of revenue. And those are the intelligent things, by the way, we should be talking about.
Okay.
Yeah. Because some of them, if we just talk, just shouting or payukering, as we sometimes used to say, it doesn't help the country. Let's get down to it.
Okay.
If it is the American government, if what I read in the papers today is true, negotiate. You can't fight, but you negotiate and say, no, to the extent that we have also contributed digitally to the economy of the US, we should get our fair share of revenue.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about now the bottom of the pyramid again, Obonyo. The social security coverage in that part of the pyramid is generally low. And in fact, very few employers in that informal economy really submit or remit their employees funds to social funds like the NSSF. And in fact, as we speak today, a few hours ago, a 3-judge bench of the Employment and Labor Relations Court has declared that the National Social Security Fund Act is actually illegal, is null and void. How will this affect the president's plan to increase NSSF contributions? This is something that he's been very, very passionate about.
I think one of the things that, first of all, with the laws that we make, before I come to the social issues of social security, I think we must have quality debates on the kind of laws that we make, because if you look at the various judgments, most of the laws that have been made, most of the offices that have been created, you saw that with a program like CDF, it's now it was ruled unconstitutional by the Supreme Court. We saw the Chief Administrative Secretary's offices being declared unconstitutional. That's all.
So they're back.
Yeah,
the new regime wants them back.
Wants them back, just like the new. The parliamentarians want CDF back, and a couple of other things. So what I'm trying to say is that we need to ensure that the laws we create are not just done out of expediency, but they are really laws that are anchored on our constitution. And so I had not come across the ruling on NSSF, you said?
Yes, the NSSF Act, but it's okay if you've not come across it.
Yes,
we can leave it at that.
But yeah. But so I think that is in terms of laws, but also in terms of social security. I think it's very, very important. But the issue hasn't been so much about the amount that people pay. The issue has also been about ensuring that these funds are not misused, these funds are not embezzled. And so people are scared of having their funds waiting somewhere and not knowing if they are going to access those funds. So if people can be assured that there is a mechanism of ensuring that whenever you want to access these funds, when the time is due, then I think people will be encouraged to pay. That is one. Two, we should also ensure that people are being paid not poverty wages but living wages, so that when they contribute to these kitties, both employers and of course the employees, then that does not leave them in a worse situation, because it doesn't make sense for you to save so much, you remain very little, and you're trapped in some sort of a poverty situation. So as we continue having this conversation on how much, because I think now the conversation has gone to how much should people pay, both employers and employees, on this issue of social security, we must also ask ourselves, how much are people earning? Are we pushing them to save more for the future, and at the present they remain in a worse or a disadvantaged situation? So from a policy perspective, that's what I would share.
Obonyo, do you find it funny that our leaders, and especially in the National Assembly, immediately after they've been elected, now we're having these discussions about who's the majority, who's the minority side, and then in the midst of it all, they remember, oh, by the way, there's this SRC, they scrapped our plenary sitting allowances, and now they're even threatening to get the Parliamentary Service Commission handle their issues and not the Salaries and Remuneration Commission. What do you think should be done to ensure that now, because the SRC had come up with a way to really corner them and tell them, as you continue campaigning, just know that you are signing for a new contract, and this is what is going to be given to you, and you should be content with that. But now here we are.
I think, one, we must respect independent bodies that are created through the Constitution, and this would mean independent offices and commissions. They have a very important role, and some of the measures that they're coming up with are not mere suggestions. These are constitutional offices, and so they're just carrying on. Parliament has the Parliamentary Service Commission that can always negotiate with the SRC. But on the question of allowances, I think if you look at our parliamentarians, truly they are one of the highly paid members of parliament across the globe. And that seems to be an incentive for people vying for office, so that it is never about service to the people, public service. It's really, what am I going to get from it? So we must find a way of removing that notion that I'm vying so that I can go and accumulate wealth. So on this, I would say SRC needs to be firm, even if it means even taking judicial action to ensure that we do not create so much flexibility, because already our economy is ailing, and you see parliamentarians' priority, their priority agenda, and I've seen most of them being interviewed during their National Assembly induction, and even the Senate. What comes to them, when you ask them, the first thing is always about this thing of allowances, because that is what seems to be an incentive. They're being paid, but they're also being given a lot of allowances, and that seems to be incentive. But for us also to remove that, we need to remove excuses, things that give them excuses. For example, this issue that people are depending on them. They have to go for Arambe's, for funerals and all that. We need more civic awareness and tell people, look, you're not electing a member of parliament so that he can come to your Arambe. That's not the reason. Now you've seen them fighting back for CDF, which is actually unconstitutional unless it is restructured in a way that allows them to run it. So that a parliamentarian is not concerned about the core businesses of, you know, oversight, representation and legislation. They want to win awards in an area that is not part of their mandate on implementing development programs. So I think we must also remove those kind of things so that we ensure that a member of parliament concentrates on their key role, and that what is driving them is not necessarily what they are going to accumulate. And lastly is, unless we have the campaign financing law in place, people will continue using so much money to get into office. And remember, if they are putting in so much money, they also need to recover that money. And one of the ways of recovering that money for them is through those allowances and all that. So if we do not have a cap on the much that they can spend, then they'll spend so much, they get in and they want to recoup this. But, and you know, we do not have a campaign financing. It was suspended in, I think, 2013. So people are using millions and millions, and when they get in there, their salaries cannot match whatever they spend, so they have to use other means, you know, allowances and, you know, taking money from other coffers. Yeah.
Well, thank you. And you've talked about something very important about capping their spending, and I know Erastus here has issues about our debt ceiling. Why? Just take us through as we wrap this up. The national debt ceiling, having it raised to 9 trillion shillings, according to you, was ill-informed. Why was that?
It was because Kenya became an oil-producing country.
Oh, okay.
Shocked? It is in the Hansard.
Yes.
Yeah. And the madam who was chairing the parliamentary session at that time said, we vote because Kenya is an oil-producing country. And blah, blah, and everybody then voted. I was shocked to my foundations as I read the Hansard that some people are not aware that Kenya is not an oil-producing country. And that is how it was raised. And the whole idea of linking the national debt to the GDP was erased and rubbished. Parliament took us there. Parliament should take us out of that problem. That is my, and I'm glad some of the people who are there in that parliament are back in parliament. That is it. But can I qualify that?
Go ahead.
Debt is not bad as long as it is managed well. And it is put in productive things that have got either medium-term or long-term transmittive effect to the economy. And allow me to say one word about NSSF, that please, the increase of NSSF or the purported or the desired increase was not only unconstitutional, but if you leave the constitutional side of it, because it was because of public participation. I've read a little bit of it. So what if it is taken back now and there is some kind of public participation? You know what will happen? It is going to be passed. Even in one reading, they will pass it. Because as long as the money is not coming from my pocket, it's coming from everybody in the street, they will pass it. I don't see the material that somebody can use to oppose that. But 2,000 shillings is not right. Because if with the 200 shillings, we raise so much money, if we increase it to 2,000 10 times, you know what will happen? One diplomat some years ago said, they will vomit all over our shoes. That is what, because people will eat until they are bursting, and they will vomit. So I want to say that because of the hustler fund that will be created, we don't need to increase this thing to 2,000 shillings.
Okay.
Because there will be a lot of social welfare type of activities in the economy. So the Mama Mboga Fund, which is also coming, and the Hustler Fund and all those things, that is much more the reason why you should not even attempt to increase NSF to 2,000 shillings. Because these people will be taken care of. And there are various saving schemes that freedom must allow me to place my money where I want. Not, you don't dictate to me where to take your money, to take my money to NSSF. Freedom of choice.
Well, thank you very much, FCPA Erastus Kwaka, who's a member of the Public Finance and Tax Committee. ISPAC, thank you so much for finding time to join us for this very important discussion. Asante sana.
Thank you.
And of course, thank you so much, Raphael Obonyo, the public policy analyst. Thank you so much for coming.
Thanks, too.
On the show.
Thank you.
Well, we have to end it here, unfortunately, in the interest of time. This has been GamePlan 2022. We're talking about a very important topic, a topic that a lot of people have had a discussion about online and offline as well. My name is Munene, our sign language interpreter. Who has been with us is Catherine Simaloy, and on behalf of everyone who has made this a